Hello everyone, how are you going? Welcome to Canada's secret World War II weapons lab, something that I'm not completely surprised they have, but it has definitely piqued my curiosity.
What do Jeopardy host Alex Trebek, Canadian Geographic Magazine, and a secret World War II chemical weapons lab have in common? In this episode of My Canada, we're going to dive into the extraordinary history of a building at 50 Sussex Drive in our nation's capital of Ottawa, Canada. This is one of the most historically significant places in all of Canada, where the Rideau Falls meets the Ottawa River. This beautiful building behind me at 50 Sussex Drive is actually two buildings in one. The first part, the modern part, was built in 2000 by the National Capital Commission to house the Canada and the World Pavilion. The older part of the building lies beneath the pavement here. But even before that, this was a pulp and paper mill.
Hang on a second, they have already said that it was two levels, and the first one was just built in modern times to commemorate Canada and the world. I also love that entire kind of compass that they showed. It is just a very tastefully done Canadian compass, you know, you definitely know where you are and whose country it is, but it's not over the top, there's not even a red bit in it. But to then come down here and see, what is it, the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, okay, that makes sense why it's Canada and the world, and then I guess, so that's level 1, and that's the modern building, and then for level 2, that then went, okay, let's just have a pulp and paper mill, and that's the original, but what, is there just some third secret level under that there was just some weapons lab back in World War II?
This is the traditional territory of the Algonquin, Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, St. Lawrence Iroquois, and Huron-Wendat people.
Wow.
By 11,000 years ago, the Rideau region would have been clearing of ice, and these nomadic hunter-gatherers were following large game like caribou along the waterways. The conditions here would have been subarctic. But between 10,000 and 2,800 years ago, the climate started to warm and people traveled along these waterways in dugout canoes. And there's a lot of evidence of early trade between different groups.
Honestly, that is the incredible thing about water, you know, you look all over the world and be it either a modern city or an ancient city and civilization, but they are all just situated around just major flowing rivers or harbours and things like that, you know, from the Thames to Sydney Harbour and then the Great Lakes and even just the massive rivers that run all over the world. You can see why these civilizations were built upon them and still are to this day, because they just provide such a resource, you know, you're rich in water, you're rich in all these different things. It even opens up your world to trade, you know, you can have bigger boats or even, like you said, just carve out kayaks and canoes and just go around to so many places so much easier.
Guided by Algonquin traders, Etienne Brulé is widely regarded as the first European to travel upriver, passing by the falls in 1610 on his way to the Great Lakes. In 1613, Samuel de Champlain wrote in his journal about his encounters with the Algonquin people of the region known as the Kichisibi. He saw two beautiful 9-meter-high waterfalls and named them Le Rideau, the French word for curtains.
Okay.
Many missionaries, explorers, and traders followed, with their first maps designating the river as Ottawa, derived from the Algonquin word Ottaway.
Well, there we go. Everything that I was just saying, she's absolutely backed it up with that real evidence instead of just me spitballing out here, but it makes sense because rivers can provide such a resource for trade and travel. The only thing that I'm a little bit confused about is she said the first maps indicated the river as Ottawa, and so does that mean that Ottawa wasn't a thing and Ottawa the name came from Ottawa the river?
On New Year's Eve 1857, Queen Victoria designated the land along the Ottawa and Rideau rivers to become the new permanent capital. The falls, on the border of French-populated Lower Canada and English Upper Canada, were the industrial centerpiece of the new city.
Yeah.
As the 20th century dawned, the Mackay and McKinnon mills were among the largest in all of North America, and many more mills, breweries, and factories lined the banks.
Oh, look at that. There's some serious buildings. It's almost like they've got an entire hydroelectric kind of river and water supply there. I mean, looking at all of these illustrations and photos again, it doesn't look as though they have any of that kind of infrastructure, not even rudimentary versions of it. It just looks like they would be using it as a water supply. And then I guess what? You would distill it, or is it going to be fresh water? I guess if it's a river, it's going to be fresh water, and so you just kind of take it out and just make your paper. It's easy, isn't it? And I guess the other aspect that I've only just thought about is, of course, you're going to have so much access to paper because you're going to have the entire water supply feeding all the trees that you were chopping down to make this paper. I mean, I can only imagine they weren't exactly selective in what they cut down and where they cut down, and that would have been an environmental disaster on its own scale of the time, especially if you are having some of the biggest mills in North America just situated on these once pristine rivers, just pumping out all their excess waste into the river and then just cutting down everything upstream. But otherwise, looking at that and just seeing the amount of water flow that you would have had, just 9-meter high curtains of water, it makes total sense as to why you would want to try and harness that.
In the late 1930s, with the Second World War looming over Europe, the old mill buildings at Rideau Falls were converted by the National Research Council and designated as the John Street Labs, which housed a classified top-secret government project developing and testing chemical weapons.
Of course it did. Like I was just saying, there would have been so much that just went into that river, and that was just from a paper mill point of view, let alone when you're suddenly just testing weapons and testing chemical weapons especially. And I feel as though one of the weirdest things about war is so often things are just hiding in plain sight. You know, you go, okay, yeah, that was once a mill and I think it's a bit run down, I don't know what's in there anymore, but all of a sudden they're just testing chemical weapons and you go, oh wow, I never knew that, but geez, okay.
From the outside, the site appeared to be one of the many nondescript factories in the area.
Yeah,
but on
exactly.
the inside, some of the top Allied researchers in the world were preparing to wage chemical and biological warfare. As a slight misdirection to the curious, the buildings also housed the first National Film Board of Canada, the National Film Commission,
Nice.
and they proudly hung a Motion Picture Commission sign at a prominent entrance.
There we go, like I was saying, hiding in plain sight, but not completely out in the open, because people go, oh yeah, I don't really know what's in there, it's just a building, it's not like it's a bunker or anything completely out of the view, no, it's just an industrial lot where they're filming stuff, but meanwhile they're just manufacturing or at least testing some of the most highly classified, highly dangerous and highly destructive things in all of war. And so it does make me wonder if the people that were a part of the film association knew what were going on just below them, next to them, all around them, or were they also completely oblivious to it?
In addition to the study, testing, and manufacturing of biochemical weapons and the associated gear to counteract them, like gas masks and advanced filtration systems,
Wow.
the John Street Labs also conducted testing on volunteer soldiers.
Whoa.
Many of these human subjects suffered great injury in the form of respiratory illnesses and serious, painful blistering of the skin. In 2004, the Ministers of National Defense and Veterans Affairs instituted a payment program to compensate the veterans who were injured during the chemical warfare testing. Following the war, in 1947, the program at Rideau Falls ended. Most of the lab's buildings were demolished, and this area near the falls was turned into Rideau Falls Park.
Of course it was demolished because they're just going to be keeping every little military secret that they conjured up in that little lab of theirs just basically either buried or in their own heads. I mean, it's amazing that they were developing gas masks in the entire plant, you know, or that was one thing that they were doing, and it's also amazing because I've never seen a dog wearing a gas mask, but it makes so much sense, and it's something I've worried about before, thought about before, going, hang on a second, I'm seeing these dogs in this area, and I don't think they have gas masks made for them, but clearly you're going to see the long nose of that gas mask and the little beady eyes. It's great. I mean, great in the scheme of things, of course, because I can't imagine those gas masks just living up to too many modern codes, but hey, they tried their best and I think they did something at least. But I think what caught me off guard the most was just the fact that these veterans weren't helped out until recent times. I mean, I guess so often these things are just swept under the rug to the point where everyone forgets about them. They go, I don't even know what you did. You weren't even a part of the war. Your name's not on any list, but meanwhile, you're just a veteran of just being volunteer chemical warfare, which would have been some absolutely horrific sights. You know, who knows what they would have been cooking up in that lab and what kind of experimentation would have been done with gas masks, without gas masks, just to see what its true effects are. And so even though I can only imagine there was a whole group of people that never made it to the other side of the weapons testing, at least there is a little bit of support for some of the ones that did.
Some of the infrastructure, including 50 Sussex, survived. In 2000, the National Capital Commission built a modern structure above the John Street Labs Foundation to house the Canada and the World Pavilion.
Nice.
It was an attraction where visitors could learn about Canada's contributions to international diplomacy, peacekeeping, science, and technology. With declining attendance and financial constraints, it was closed 5 years later.
Oh, wait, what? It was closed? Why would it have ever been closed? Surely it's one of those things that is just part of the government's budget surplus where you just go, okay then, yep, we can just chuck money to here and chuck money to there, just as tourism things and just respectful memorials, if nothing else. Especially considering we have learned throughout this entire video that it actually has historical weight. It's not just some pavilion they knocked up in 2004 just for the sake of it. No, it was a chemical warfare plant. Especially because it's not a big building. It doesn't cost that much to run. You have like one security guard and one cleaner a day and you're good.
The building sat mostly unused and empty until 2017, when it was refurbished and transformed to be the new home of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society and Canadian Geographic Magazine.
I'm here for this very special dedication with the Prime Minister of Canada.
Designated as Canada's Centre for Geography and Exploration, 50 Sussex is enjoying a newfound life as an education outreach and events centre.
There we go. Whoa! That was not what I was expecting. I hadn't seen it in winter, but of course it makes so much sense. Look at that. That freezing cold river with that icy, frosty, snowy, whatever you want to call it, surface. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be too taken aback because it is Canada and I know it does snow there, but every other shot has just been during the summer, I can only assume. Like, look, this is all green. That's year round in my head. But at least they are now now in the good books again, you don't just have this desolate, derelict building just sitting there doing nothing. No, they refurb the entire building, spend some money, and just really gave it a purpose again. I mean, I also did not know that there was such a thing as Canadian Geographic, but it absolutely makes sense that there would be one because we have an Australian Geographic, you also have National Geographic, and so I think it is the perfect thing to be putting up in this building because yes, it's an insane spot and a beautiful building, but it also has historical influence.
As the first RCGS Explorer in residence, I've been fortunate to share this space with dignitaries, scientists, politicians, explorers, and prime ministers.
Wow.
I've given presentations about my expeditions and even hosted the Canadian Geographic Challenge finals in the new Alex Trebek Theatre, named in honor of the beloved TV host who is the honorary president of the society.
Wow. Okay, there's obviously a lot going on there, but I'm also interested to know what is the National Geographic or Canadian Geographic finals? It looks like there's a whole bundle of school kids just competing in some kind of a trivia is what I can assume. But hey, it is nice to see that it is also a function center and it absolutely makes sense. Like I was saying, it's one hell of a spot and so use it all you can. And when you've got that kind of forecourt and all those areas, yeah, it's perfect.
My Canada has beautiful waterfalls, an historic river, and a former secret chemical warfare plant.
Yeah.
And it's now the home of an organization that strives to make Canada better known to Canadians and the world.
Fair enough. Actually, I saw this building earlier in the background and went, wow, that is one hell of a building. It's so ornate and so many different spires and all those things. But what is it? I mean, it's in Ottawa, and so is that going to be like a Parliament House kind of situation? Or hopefully people can let me know. But yeah, that is an incredible building. But like she was saying, really is quite an impressive history that it has. I mean, I guess it isn't just one building, and the original building has been since demolished. And I can only imagine that going from a paper mill to a chemical warfare plant, there would have been some modifications made as well. And so it wouldn't have been a perfect representation of what the original building is, and of course they knocked it down since. But like I was saying, the fact that it isn't just a derelict site and it actually has a purpose, it needed a bit of money into it, but now you can just host functions and all these kind of things there, and it's both important nationally and internationally, as for goodness sake, it's the center point of geography for the second biggest country in the world. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm going to call it there, so thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to do the YouTube algorithmic things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you are watching, then make sure to go check out the other ones I've done. Also, make sure to go check out the original video down in the description below, or hey, maybe even just want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.